Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Daily Huddle. Today is Tuesday, June the 3rd. And on Tuesdays, I am one of your hosts where we talk about everything communication and relationships. And today is a special day for me because I'm going to talk about life minutes. And our question of the day is, how are you spending your life minutes? Many of you know that I wrote a book called Life Minutes. And I want to give a little bit of context as to where the term life minutes came from, and then how we can take the term and apply it to our lives to help the way that we experience life. So first, I do want to give a little context into where the term life minutes came from, where it was first coined. And it was actually coined by my youngest daughter. Her name is Holly. And when she was, I think, about 13 years old, maybe younger, actually. I'm going to say she probably was 11 or 12. We gave her her first cell phone. Now, this was many, many years ago. And in those days, you had to be careful about how many minutes you used on your cell phone because they cost money. And so after Holly got her first cell phone, I noticed something. I noticed that whenever she would hang up the phone, she wouldn't say goodbye. She wouldn't say see you later. She wouldn't say bye, Mom, I love you. She would just end the call. And so I called her out on it one day. I said, Holly, why are you just hanging up the phone as soon as the conversation no longer serves you? You can't do that. You have to say, give kind of a goodbye greeting. And she said, Mom, I just don't want to waste my minutes. And I said, Well, Holly, we have a family plan. Remember, I told you that. So you don't have to worry about your minutes. And she said, No, Mom, I'm talking about my life minutes. And in that moment, I thought to myself, how is it that an 11 or 12-year-old young girl came to value life minutes? And it has been a term in our family ever since. So if I'm sitting in traffic and I am angry, I am saying to myself and my community, what a waste of life minutes. Because our life minutes are precious, every single one of them. And so I thought what we would talk about today is put some framework around how we can make sure that we are spending most of our life minutes the way that we want to. And so, what I want to talk about today is living in line with our values. And when we are living in line with our values, we are spending our life minutes in the very best way. And so I think what would be fun to do is to really separate the difference between values and priorities, because those are two different things. And what I'll do first is share my defined values and my defined priorities, which, as I mentioned, are two different things. And then we can talk about what gets in the way of our spending our life minutes in alignment with our values and priorities. Now, I have given some thought to this because also I teach this in workshops, leadership development workshops. So I want to first talk about values. To me, and you can define these any way that you want to, but for this purpose, values are things that we respect, things that we want to stand for. The best way to think about values for me is one day, when I'm gone from this earth, what do I hope people will say about Tara Heaton? Those are my values, not my priorities. And here are my top values today. And I'm always kind of tweaking these, but right now, these are the things that I value most. There are 5 things. And they are honesty, accountability, sincerity, open-mindedness, and joyfulness. And I want to break those down for just a moment and share why those are important to me at this stage in my life. Honesty and sincerity to me are really two different things, but I truly respect and value honesty because sometimes it's hard to be honest. Sometimes someone might ask us a question, and if we don't want to give the honest answer, we might give something that's not completely truthful. And so I have challenged myself over the years to either be completely honest or to have the courage to say, that's not something I want to get into. I don't feel that I want to share that right now. There are so many different layers of honesty, and I think sometimes we justify being less than honest because it's something we don't want to share. So all of these values to me are in line with what I call a practice. I'm always practicing to hone these. Now, number 2 has been pretty stable in my life for a long time, and that's accountability. To me, the opposite of being accountable for your life and responsible is being a victim. And the minute that we blame our inability to perform, to be successful, to have quality relationships on anything else other than ourselves, we become powerless. So I always look at what I can control. So that again is something that I value, remaining responsible and accountable for the way that I experience this life and what I'm able to achieve, for example. Sincerity, probably I should have said that one either first or last, because that's always my number 1, is to be sincere. I feel like the opposite of being sincere is being fake, being artificial. And I'll tell you, that is no way to spend life minutes. As long as we are here, we may as well show up fully ourselves. That to me is what builds relationships. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. Now, these last 2 have become something that I'm always looking at my values and what matters to me. But these last 2 are something that have not always been on this list. But these last 2 are things that I really am focusing on now in life. And one of those is open-mindedness. I think the more that I pay attention to vitriol, divisiveness, criticism, slamming, blaming, the more I want to remain open-minded, because that allows me to be compassionate, to stay curious, to keep learning, which is something else we're going to get into in a moment. So rather than making judgments, making assumptions, I want to remain constantly open-minded, flexible, able to think, you know what? I used to believe this. Now I believe this. I used to think this was an absolute, but now I'm not so sure. That feels powerful to me, to not be so certainly confident in our beliefs at every moment of every day. And the last one is joyful. I have spent a lot of time understanding the actual physiological creation of joy. What is something that I call the joy factor or the biology of joy? I know that to have joy in our life comes from intention. It does not mean just showing up with a fake smile on our face and pretending like everything's okay. Or even worse than that is saying, well, my heartache is not as bad as other people's, therefore I ought to be joyful. That's not what joy is. Joy is squeezing the juice out of every moment in this lifetime to the best of our ability, no matter what we're facing in life. That is showing up joyful. So those are my values. And again, different than priorities, but I want to talk values and priorities and then talk about how we're spending our life minutes and if they are in line with these. So my values, again, a great way to consider what you value is to ask yourself, what do I want people to say about me one day when I'm not here? And for me, right now in this season in life, I want people to say that I was honest, that I was accountable, that I was sincere, that I am open-minded and joyful. All right, so those are values. Now, let's talk about priorities, which are different for me. And I've spent some time just preparing for this conversation because I don't spend as much time thinking about my priorities, but I just sat with what really matters to me, again, at this stage in life. What do I prioritize? And I again came up with 5 things that I believe are my top priorities. The number 1 priority in my life, no doubt about it, is relationships. Not relationships with larger and larger and growing number of people. It's not about quantity. It is about the depth and quality of the relationships that I have, starting with my family, and after that, going to my closest friends. 100%, that is my number 1 priority, the relationships in this life. And so we're going to get into how the spending of our life minutes, what that has to do with our relationships. Now, the number two thing that I prioritize, and this has really given me some time to kind of think, is my health. Because when we feel good, we are able to live in line with our values, right? And we have to be healthy to feel good. And there are so many ways that we can contribute to our health. Health is a big word, right? So it's not just diet, it's not just exercise, but it's also emotional health and mental health. And I am doing all that I can to take care of that without making myself feel deprived or restrained in this life. And something that I'm doing right now is, and you guys have heard me say this before, I have a therapist again, and I'm trying to hang in there with it. It is very hard for me, which is probably a good thing. So relationships and health. After that, and I would not have said this even 10 years ago, after that, I prioritize peace. And what peace means to me is the opposite of anxiety and stress. That's the kind of peace that I'm talking about. Being able to breathe through the most difficult times. I was in pouring down rain in traffic in Atlanta with Caroline, looking for a place to charge my car. And sweet little Caroline started coming up with all these ways to relieve my stress. I was the opposite of peaceful. Now, I've gotten a lot better about traffic and stress, but with the rain and not being able to charge the car, and I had to be at this event, and I was going to be all wet, sweet little Caroline just looked over at me and she said, breathe. And that has become a practice of mine. So peace is important to me. And then the other two things are, which I've a little bit touched on. The next one is learning. So we hear so many folks say, I want to be a lifelong learner. But do you? Do we? Because really, really, truly continuing to learn means that we need to be vulnerable. We need to say, I don't know it all. So I'm not talking about only learning more about neuroscience, but learning to be self-aware, learning about other people's perspectives, learning about poetry or art or science. I want to keep learning. That is a priority of mine because learning makes me feel alive. So I'm working on another book and I'm learning to be a better writer. It's not good enough. I want to continue to grow and learn. That's a priority of mine. And the last one is to make an impact. That is important to me. I don't want to just live in this place of healthy, good relationships, peaceful learning without having it to make a difference in some way, in some small way or large way on this earth. So I want to review those. These are me, but I want to encourage you to, and I made my little notes. So I just want to review these because I want to encourage you to give some time to asking yourself, what are my values and what are my priorities? For me, the values, I don't even need to look at them really, are honesty, accountability, sincerity, open-mindedness, and joyfulness. And the things that I've been asking myself lately, what do I prioritize, are relationships, health, peace, learning, and impact. Those are me. What are yours? Once you define those, ask yourself this: are you spending your life minutes in accordance with your values and priorities? Some days I'm able to do that, to really spend my life minutes in alignment with my values. And some days and some moments I don't. So let's talk about, now that we've given this some context, let's talk about what gets in the way of spending our life minutes in alignment with our values and priorities. And I think, for me, 3 things stand in the way: worry, shame, and fear. Those 3 things can get in the way of my values. I'll give you just a few examples, and then if we have some time, I definitely want to hear from you. I was raised by a professional worrier. My mom worried about everything. And so I think a little bit I rebelled against that. But do you know that worrying is very, very closely linked with anxiety? When we are constantly thinking about things that we can't control, we cannot live in our values. We cannot be in the moment. The only life minute we have is the one we're living right now. So it's easy to say, stop worrying. It's a practice. It takes intention. But I want to remind you of something that I've learned about worrying. And it's more about watching other people worry because I'm an action person. I will worry until I make a decision, then I'm more about action. But the folks that I know that are really, really worrying, I think somehow they tie that to love. Like, who would I be if I'm not worried about the people that I love? Therefore, I'm going to use worry as a barrier to living because I love the people that I love so much on this earth. And I don't believe that's love. I think that worrying is a barrier to living. So I want to encourage us to remember that worrying is not helping anything. It's only hindering what we probably prioritize. For example, if I'm going to spend some time with somebody that I love, if I'm going to say that I prioritize relationships, how can I sit and worry and not take the advantage of that time with that person? Again, y'all, this takes practice. It's not that we can just say, okay, that makes sense, Tara. I'm going to stop worrying. It's not that easy. It takes intention. It takes practice. And that's what I am talking about when we're spending life minutes is the practice of it. All right, I'll give another example from one of those other words. Worry, shame, fear. Those are what are getting in the way of us spending our life minutes in accordance with our values and priorities. Let's talk about shame. For whatever reason, I see this more showing up in lives of women, but it applies to all of us. We tend to shame ourselves for our feelings. Whatever it is that we feel, we think, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. I should feel more grateful. I should feel more joyful. I should feel these ways. I think it comes from a different place for all of us. But as long as we're doing that, we are not giving ourselves permission for joy. Think about that just for a moment. As long as we're telling ourselves that we should have been a better mother, we should have been a better sister, we should have been a better son, daughter, as long as we're shaming ourselves, it's like we are not given permission to have joy. And so I want to remind you that whatever it is in the past, those thoughts of shaming ourselves or feeling guilty are completely worthless. Life, as I say, is right now. And the very best that we can do is ask ourselves what we care about and start building that practice of really investing into those moments in accordance with our values. All right, so we've talked about what gets in the way of spending our life minutes in alignment with our values and priorities. And I believe at the top of those are worry, shame, and fear. So what can drive those out? What drives away worry, shame, and fear? For me, 3 things: love, truth, and joy. And those all take practice. And I want to start with truth. To me, truth is the beginning of living with love and joy. And I'll tell you what I mean by truth is, again, we tend to tell ourselves how we should be, how we should feel, and how we should show up. We hide our full truth because we're trying to be something that we think everybody else wants to see. And when we do that, do you know what we are not accessing? Quality relationships. The most truthful, most perfect way that you think and you are and you believe, that truth is what builds quality relationships. So I want to just think about that for a moment. Are you looking for relationships with perfect people? I think no. Are you looking for relationships with people who are wildly successful and seem to have it all together? To me, that's a big hell no. I am looking for relationships that are honest and truthful, where someone has the courage to share their insecurities, their fears, and their wins and their celebrations. Most of us have a tendency, though, to do one or the other. Most of us have a tendency to either share all our successes and wins as if we have it all figured out because we think that's what people want to hear, Or we have a tendency to kind of degrade ourselves at every turn. Oh, I'm not good enough. I should have. I wish this. I'm not that. We all have wins and gifts and successes and things to celebrate that we should share in relationship. And we all have insecurities, every one of us, things that we wish we were better about, things we wish we could do better with. Those are part of a relationship. So to me, truth is freedom. When we stop filtering and thinking about what we ought to be communicating in order to build a relationship, all of a sudden we feel free, we can stand taller, and we can build a foundation on truth. We never have to worry about what was said or what we presented because we know that we stand in our truth. And that leads into what I believe drives away worry, shame, and fear, and that's love and joy. Even if we are living in heartache, we have the capacity to love and to experience joy. And for me, those start with truth. So here's the big message from today. Ask yourself, what are your values and what are your priorities? Put those on paper. Think about them. Really give them some thought. And 5 is really the max that you should come up with. If you only come up with 3, that's even better because you can remember those and you can live in those. So if you come up with 5 of each, I even would say, okay, what are my top 3? And then use those as your intention when you're on the phone, when you're in a meeting, when you're in the kitchen, when you're walking with your spouse. Are you playing with your phone? Are you playing a game while you're trying to communicate with somebody? Be in that moment because you remind yourself what it is that you value and prioritize. And then find out what's getting in the way of those. Could it be worry, shame, or fear? And how are we going to drive those out? I say it starts with truth, which gives us freedom and the ability and the responsibility to live in love and joy. Something that I think I will just kind of put a bow on this before we see if you guys want to talk about it is I have reminded myself since I was a very young child to never, ever give anyone the power over my spirit. You are responsible for the way you experience this life. Nobody else, not your children, not your parents, not your boss. You are responsible for the way that you experience life. So if you're not spending your life minutes the way that you want to, ask yourself how you can change that. That does not mean not to be in situations that are uncomfortable or that make you upset. It means to take that moment, this moment right here on the Daily Huddle, and make the most of it or don't be in it. All or nothing, baby, because as I often say, life is now. So I hope this has been an inspiring message for you. This is kind of at the heart of my book, Life Minutes. But if you all have any thoughts, questions, comments, I'd love to hear from you or hear what you think your values and priorities are.
Hey, Tara.
Good morning.
I've been being with your book, and being in this conversation is confronting me the same way your book did. So, one of the things I'm seeing for myself in this conversation is that I've always lived as if I'm afraid of missing something.
Hmm.
Like I'm always in, kind of like always in FOMO, but it's like in the background. Not in
I
the
didn't know that about you.
Huh?
I did not know that about you.
Yeah, so it's like I love Haiti, but I'm afraid of what I'd miss if I move back and don't stay here. Right?
Interesting.
Something like that. Or I love being an engineer, but I've always uh, had that against my love for making a difference to people. So I didn't want to miss out on technology, but I also don't want to miss out on being with people. So I do
Mhm.
both. And
Okay.
so in looking at everything you're talking about, priorities and values, I think what I'm discovering is that I have confused and conflated values and priorities. So if I don't do that,
Mhm.
I can actually choose priorities and still be with all my values. So that's the real value I'm taking away from this,
Cool. Okay.
right? So in a world where I have confused values with priorities, I felt as if I had to choose all the values, which I do want to, right? I do want to choose integrity. I do want to choose fun. I do want to choose making a difference for others. I do want to choose all that. And now I'm free because I can create priorities from them.
Interesting.
Not
Yeah,
to
that's quite a
leave my
transformation.
values on the side.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
loving that. It's interesting that you talk about FOMO because um it's to me that's kind of like the stepsister or stepbrother of worry. Like as long as we're here in this moment in the daily huddle using technology, we might as well be all in it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say that, like as long as you're here in the US and you're teaching your workshops, whatever it is that you're doing, you might as well be all in it in that moment instead of second guessing yourself. The more I think about it, I believe that I have that tendency too. Like, should I have quit the big client? Should I be doing something different right now? But as long as I'm doing this, I've got to give it my all, right?
Yeah. I do give it my all, but what I'm seeing over time and looking through the reflections you're confronting us with through Life Minutes is that I gave my all here, and then I go give my all there,
Okay.
and then I give my all here, and then I go give my all there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a continuity and a consistency in giving it my all to a single priority
Mm,
that's possible for myself now.
okay.
Yeah, I don't have to compromise my values to give my all to a single or set of priorities that I choose.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, we have like another 2 minutes if anybody else wants to chime in, but if they don't, just go ahead if you do. But if you don't, I would love to know because I have a feeling you've given some thought to your values and priorities. Just off the top of your head, would you share some of yours?
My top three, the first one is integrity. Uh,
Hmm.
and it matches, I was looking at yours, it matches with your honesty. It's my willingness to tell myself the truth and then to tell others the truth, even when I don't want to. Uh,
Okay.
and then the second one is making a difference for others, like living my life to make a difference for others.
Mm,
Do that. And then the third one is loving myself and loving others.
nice.
I love leading. I love leading with those three. And if
Mhm.
I'm there and I can keep them all, then I don't have to worry about the priorities I choose. I can
Mm,
live as that human being, what
yeah.
priorities are. And that gives me the opportunity to stick to one,
Okay.
change a priority when it doesn't work and it doesn't align.
Mm. Yeah. Don't you feel like once you define those things, it's very powerful. It helps you make your decisions in life, right? Like you know what you care about, you know what you stand for. And therefore, when you're confronted with a decision you need to make, you can just kind of lean on your values and priorities and the answer comes clear. Yeah, very cool. This has been really a joyful conversation for me. So thank you all for being here and listening and collaborating. I do want to sign off with our tenants, and I must start with love, as I always do. But when we can embrace a spirit of love, it absolutely can transform for good the way we experience our life minutes. And then remember to give. Give of your time, of your heart, of your attention with all your might. And remember to throw that head back in laughter. Laughter is so healing. So remember to take time to find laughter. It really does build endorphins. And then take care of your stress. That means to get your sleep, eat mostly plants and fill your body with water, and to reduce your stress and to get up off that booty and move that body. I thank you all for being here on the Daily Huddle. Until next time, bye bye. Thank you, Maria. Thank you for your note. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tara.